Welcome back to Business Office Specialist. In today's video, we're going to be looking at some formatting features that are available in Google Sheets for spreadsheets. Now, we've looked at a few things like font stylings and basic borders and fill colors, but we're going to be looking at some other advanced stuff today. If you're doing this as part of the Canvas course, you will find a link to this document in your Canvas course, and you can open it up. If you are just watching the YouTube video, there should be a link to this workbook in the description. So go ahead and pull this up. We'll walk through it together. You'll notice that there are two tabs down at the bottom. There's a markup tab, and there's an auto repair tab. Both of them have very similar settings and features that we're going to be doing. We're going to walk through the markup one together, and then you'll be able to look at auto repair on your own if you want to try out some of the features that we've been learning. So the main purpose of formatting is just to dress up a spreadsheet to make it easier for other users to read and understand the information. So one of the places I like to start with formatting is on the title up at the top. So we have a title here. This one says Victor's Electronics Center, Markup and Selling Price. But this is kind of tucked off to one side and hard to read, so I would like to make this title area stand out. So I'm going to click on cell A2 and actually drag all the way across to E2, and I'm going to merge those cells together so that the title will stretch across the entire width of our table that we're going to be working with in this worksheet. I'm also going to come to my alignments and center align that, and then do the same for A3 to E3. So I've got my title and my subtitle there. Let's italicize that subtitle just to make it a little different from the title itself. And then I'm going to use some borders here just to kind of break up the title and make it stand out. It'll make it easier to read not only here in the spreadsheet, but also when it's printed. So we've done borders before, but it's just a little window symbol up here on the icon or on the ribbon. And I'm going to do a top border above Victor's Electronics Center, and you'll see that it's one nice thin line. But down at the bottom, I want to make the bottom one a little bit different. So I'm going to set that border, but then you also have off to the right here what's called border styles. So if I click on the border styles, you can see that there's different options for these styles. I want an extra thick bottom border, so I'm going to choose that, third option down. And now that stands out just a little bit. So borders are a really great way, and changing the styles of the borders are a great way to make certain sections of your spreadsheet kind of pop out and stand out for you and make them easier to read, especially when they're printed on paper. Now, another thing that we have issues with here is all of these cells are defaulted to a specific size. So every single cell in here is exactly the same size, but you can see looking at your items that that size isn't big enough. It's cutting off the text. So if I wanted to, I could grow that column width so that everything fits. One way to do that is to bring your mouse up and hover just between the two columns, right on that line between A and B, and you'll see that my cursor now changes to be two arrows pointing in different directions. If I click and hold my mouse as I drag, I can resize that column any width that I want. Now, there's another way we can do this as well. And actually, this is my favorite way to resize columns because I can resize every single column at exactly the same time. So what I'm going to do is click on A, and if I click and hold down on my mouse and then drag, you'll see that it's now highlighting multiple columns at the same time. Now, it's important that we're highlighting the entire column. It's not just highlighting a section of the spreadsheet. You actually have to highlight the entire column. So we're going to highlight all of column A, B, C, D, and E. Once you do that, then you can hover your mouse over any of the lines inside of this selection. So I'm just going to grab D and E because it's close. And instead of clicking and dragging, you're going to quickly double click or click 2 times very fast on the mouse. And then all of the highlighted columns will automatically adjust their sizes to be exactly the width of the largest things in that column. Now you'll notice that column A actually left a huge white space here. That's because it resized for the largest thing in that column, and the largest thing in that column is actually the title. Even though it's merged, it's still technically part of column A. And so it resized column A to fit that title, and that's why we've got that extra white space. But honestly, having an extra white space in front or behind those items breaks the item names up from the rest of the column and makes it look nice anyway, so I think I'll just leave it there. Now, the next thing we're going to do is actually a review of one of our previous lessons, and that's creating functions and formulas. So you can see that I have these gray cells here and these green cells here. The gray cells are for formulas, which are just math using the different cell references. And then the green cells are for the functions, those basic functions that we've been learning before. So I am going to create formulas right now for the markups in column D. A markup is just a percentage of the cost that we're hoping to gain as a business person. So when we have a business, I, for example, buy cable number 21 at $20.55. I'm not going to sell it to my customer at $20.55 because that's what I bought it for. I want to make a profit. I want to make money. So this company has decided that they want to make 40% of the cost as a markup price. So all a markup is you're taking a percentage of the cost and saying that's how much money I want to earn. So all we have to do is multiply the unit cost by the markup, and we should get that markup price. Now, you notice that if I try and drag fill this, I'm going to get errors. That's because we have to use our absolute cell references. So I'm going to come back to D4. That's the one we don't want to move. And remember, the absolute cell references use $ to glue those columns and rows in place. So I'm going to do that and redrag fill, and now I should be able to get that without an error. And then the selling price is going to be the unit cost, how much I paid for it, plus my markup. That's what I'm going to sell it for. So I'm just going to do unit cost plus markup and autofill that. And so there are my formulas. Now, functions are some of those pre-built codes that help us easily calculate more complex things. So here, I would like to just grab the average unit cost markup and selling prices. So you can either hit the equal sign and type out the average function, or use the function icon on the ribbon up here and just select average, and then select everything that you want averaged. I'm going to drag fill that across. So remember, using things like the icons on the ribbon, your drag fill, all of these tools are going to help you to complete these assignments a lot faster. So now I've got the table built out. Another thing that we can do in formatting is create alternating colors. So it's not that big of a deal right now because we have such a small table, but imagine you had a massive table with thousands of rows and 20, 30, 40 columns. As you're going across that table, it's really easy to accidentally jump down a row or jump up a row and get the wrong information. So if every other row is a different color, it's a lot easier to read a large spreadsheet. So let me show you how you can do that. We're going to highlight our table section of this spreadsheet, which is the headers up at the top all the way to the averages down at the bottom. And then if you come up to Format, there's an option called Alternating Colors. When you do that, it's going to ask you if there's a header row and if there's a footer row. A header row is where the names of each of the columns are located. We definitely have one of those, so that's going to be checked. A footer row is where you have totals or averages or things down at the bottom. In this case, we have averages down at the bottom, so we have a footer row. So what it's going to do is darken the header and footer row to show that they're different from the rest of the table, and then it's going to alternate the rest of the rows between white and a really light color. And you can choose what color you want from these default styles here. So I'm just going to grab green. You can grab any color you want, doesn't matter to me. Just pick a color from the default styles and build it out. Now if you wanted to do your own custom styles, you could come down here and change what colors are going to be headers, footers, and the alternating colors. That's up to you. You can even add more alternating colors if you wanted to, but we're going to stick with the defaults. Most of the time, that's plenty for what we need. So click Done. And you can see now I have this nice alternating color scheme so that if I'm looking at diskette, case number 2, I can scroll across to find the selling price without accidentally jumping up or down a row because I can read it with the color all the way across. Another feature that is available in spreadsheets, up to this point, we've spent a lot of time in Google Docs, for example, learning about text formatting and how to format text, changing the font styles and colors and things like that. In spreadsheets, it's all about numbers. So instead of text formatting, we spend a lot more time looking at number formatting. And there's a lot of different ways that you can format numbers. The number formatting is found on the ribbon right up here. You have a couple of defaults that are the most standard. Most people either have a regular number, or they're working with money, or they're working with percentages. So by default, a regular number is the format that's chosen, but you also have currency that you can use or percentages. Now, the markup happens to be a percentage, so let's change that to a percentage format style. So we're going to click on cell D4 to activate it, and then click Format as Percentage, and you can see that now it becomes a percentage instead of a decimal format. Now, it shows 40.00, which would be great if we had a bunch of percentages with fractions of percentages, but here we don't. So we want to get rid of those extra zeros because that's just taking up unnecessary space. To do that, you can change the decimal rounding with these two buttons here, increase decimal places and decrease decimal places. In this case, we want to decrease the decimal places, so I'm going to click that 2 times, and you can see each time I click it, one of the zeros from D4 disappears until I have just a rounded percentage, rounded to the nearest whole number. So on any of your numbers, you can choose to round up or round down by using the increase and decrease decimal places buttons. Now, for unit cost, let's highlight cells C6 down to C11 and make those currency format. And you can see that the dollar signs get really close to the numbers there. And it automatically did that for the rest of the table because it assumed that we wanted to keep the same style. And most of the time we do. But I'm going to change it this time because I want to show you a few of the other styles that are available. So we're going to highlight D6 all the way down to E11, so the markup and selling prices. And if you don't like the 2 formats that are available here, you can click on More Formats, which is the 1, 2, 3 button on the ribbon. And there's a whole lot of other options here available to you. You have date and time stamps, different scientific numbers, and we also have several different forms of money-related numbers. My favorite happens to be accounting. I'm going to click on accounting, show you what it does. You can see that in currency, the dollar sign gets smashed right up against the number, which to me makes the number harder to read. Accounting puts the dollar sign on the leftmost margin of the cell. So however big the cell is, it's going to go all the way to the left side of the cell, and then the numbers go all the way to the right side of the cell, and it has this nice space in between them that makes the number easier to read. So I'm a big fan of the accounting number format. Financial is exactly the same as number or accounting, it just takes the dollar sign off. So those are the different formats. We're going to leave markup and selling price as accounting format and leave unit cost as currency format. Now, our spreadsheet today is really small, but imagine there were many, many, many rows. So as I start scrolling down looking for stuff, one of the problems that you have is as you scroll down, the headers that tell what the columns are disappear. So if I got all the way down here, let's say a couple hundred rows down, and I find media drawers and I go, okay, 1346, what is 1346? What is that? What is column D? I don't remember. I have to scroll all the way back up to the top. Oh, that's the markup. Okay, now scroll all the way down and find the number again. That can be really annoying. So one of the options that you have is freezing panes. Freezing panes is where you freeze a section of the screen so that it doesn't move when you're scrolling. So here I want to freeze from the column headers all the way to the top. So I'm going to click on row 5. Anywhere on row 5 will do, but I'm going to click on Item and then come up to View. There's an option for freeze. Now you can freeze columns or you can freeze rows. Here we're going to freeze rows. Automatically you can freeze 1 row or 2 rows. But for ours, that's not going to work really well because that's going to freeze the title and nothing else. So the other option is you can freeze from wherever your mouse is currently clicked. So I'm going to activate row 5. So that's my active row, and anything from the active row up can be frozen. So it says up to current row, and then in parentheses it tells us which row, which is 5. So I'm going to click on that, and now everything from row 5 up is frozen, and you can see that because it's got this thick gray line that separates those rows. So now if I were to scroll way down, you can see that even though I'm scrolling, the top doesn't change. So now when I get all the way down to media drawers and I'm looking at that 1346, I can look straight up and go, oh yeah, that's the markup. Okay, I know what this is. So freezing isn't really that useful for something this small, but when you have huge spreadsheets, it's a lifesaver. And I freeze most of my spreadsheets. That's a very common tool I use. All right, the last thing I want to show you is a couple of the formatting that's not available on this screen. It's actually only available in the print preview. So we're going to either click the shortcut key for print here on the ribbon, or you can go to File and Print. When you get here, before it even takes you to the print page, it takes you to the print settings. Print settings are extremely helpful. This is where you have the orientation. Because spreadsheets are almost infinite in size, there isn't an orientation to the paper until you get to the print settings. So here it's set for portrait. I want to make it landscape, so I'm going to change this to a landscape orientation. Now, because spreadsheets can be really big, the software will automatically cut spreadsheets off at certain points and make new sheets, new pages. So sometimes you can have a single spreadsheet that runs on 4 or 5 or 6 pages that are, top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. And it can be kind of confusing to piece them all back together when you're looking at them. So if you're trying to organize it a little bit better, you can choose how big or small your spreadsheet looks on a piece of paper. For example, this one's a really small spreadsheet, and maybe if I was giving this to the president or CEO of the company, he's an older gentleman, he has a hard time reading. I've had this happen with clients before when I worked in business consulting, and they would say, hey, I can't read your spreadsheet. I can come in here and set this to be, oops, that's probably too big. Let's try 200%. Now, I just doubled the size of my spreadsheet. It fills an entire page. Now it's easier to read. So I could do that if I wanted to. Another thing you can do if it flows way over a page and you want it to stay on one page is I can come in here and say fit to width. So that means that the width of the spreadsheet will not go over a page. You can say fit to height, which means that the length of the page will not go over a page. Or you can say fit to page, which means it will resize it any way it has to make sure that the entire spreadsheet fits on only one page. That's one of my favorite print settings because most of my spreadsheets will comfortably fit on one page. So that's the setting we're going to set today, fit to page. So we're going to change the landscape orientation and we're going to fit to page. Now, we don't want to print this in real life, but we do want to save the settings. If you click cancel here, it will not save your settings. So we are going to have to click next. So I'm going to click next here. And it's going to bring me to my print page. Now here I can hit cancel. I've saved my settings. So I'm not going to print this. I'm just going to click cancel. And now the next time I go into print, you can see that my landscape and fit to page settings are still saved. But you have to click that next button and go to the print screen and then cancel from there, or your settings will not save. So those are just a few format settings that are available inside of Google Sheets for spreadsheets. Just as a quick review, we learned how to change border styles today. We also looked at changing column widths so that things can be easier to read and some quick ways and shortcuts to do that. We learned how to create alternating colors inside of a table, and we also learned how to change number formats and change the rounding of specific numbers. We also learned how to freeze panes and change some of the print settings. To learn more tools and features in the Google Suite family of apps, check out more of my videos on YouTube or visit ToriNorman.com.